Hello there guys, and welcome back to the channel. So today we are going to be talking about the 45 unit recharge cost that we have in the Battlegrounds, this particular beta for the first time ever, and also the recharge time in particular. Now, I'm making this video because I myself have kind of mixed opinion about it, and I have definitely heard from people who absolutely love it. And I'm going to try and explain that perspective the best I can. And I have heard from people who absolutely hate it. And that is also definitely a large group of players. So, as with most things, there is no kind of like unanimous or majority opinion here in this case. Well, in reality, I do think that there are way more people who dislike it. But I have heard from several content creators watching their streams from, I think, Enzo, Daddy Longlegs, a whole bunch of other people who are loving this 45 unit recharge cost. Because the point is that the cost is that high that nobody really wants to pay that. And then they replace the champions. They run out of charges on Thing, and then they look further in their roster and add, I don't know, Guardian instead, or Mephisto instead, something else. And they keep on playing. And the end result of all of that is that it does create somewhat more enjoyable experience for vast majority of the players, because you get to go up against different opponents, because typically once meta settles, there are the same 40, 50 champions used in the decks everywhere, whether they're 5 or 6 star, but you know, every deck typically is going to include the Human Torch, the Archangel, the Doctor Doom, so on and so forth. And then when you're forced to take these champions out, you get to bring in more unique, more interesting champions. And with that, your fights become more interesting, offensively and defensively, like you are forced to find less common solutions. And also, a lot more champions get an opportunity to shine. And that is a good thing. Don't get me wrong, that is 100% a good thing that variety is created. But there are downsides to that as well. And the first kind of like the big negative comment, which I am fully self-aware, because it includes myself as well in the group, that it works like that if your account is big, right? If your account is 4 million or 3.5 million, something like that, you can do that. Like looking at me and my deck at the moment, I'd have no problem, for instance, tagging in Omega Sentinel, which arguably should be in the deck already, or Mr. Fantastic, or Professor X, or Black Widow Clairvoyant, or Guardian, or Mephisto, Black Widow Deadly Origins, Spider-Ham, Terrax, Magneto House of X, Shang-Chi. Mojo is at the moment sitting on sidelines for one reason or another, or Ultron, or Joe Fixit, Mr. Negative. And as long as my account is big, I have these options that largely dilute my deck very, very little. Like, realistically, there isn't that big of a difference whether I have Ebony Maw or Mojo on my defense, or whether I'm using, I don't know, Sauron or Mr. Negative, or so on and so forth. And when those run out, I would still have opportunity to tag in fully ranked, like rank 3 champions, without really sacrificing much in my deck. It'd make it different, it'd make, you know, again, for funkier matchups, but it's not like I would be losing a ton in the overall potency of my deck. And that only works if you have a big account. And obviously Battlegrounds is one of the game modes that rewards players for having amassed good big rosters. But this situation just exacerbates the problem. It widens the divide. And the point where it feels unfair is that we have people with big accounts who can keep on playing for longer, play more, and lose very little. And then all the smaller accounts basically have to make a choice. Whether they A, stop playing as soon as their champions run out of the 3 charges that we get there. B, significantly dilute their deck and therefore their chance to win the match. Or C, fork up the units, which nobody wants to do, especially in beta. And none of those choices are great, especially considering that Battlegrounds is a game mode that's super addictive and you just want to keep on going and playing. And that is the problem here, I think, where people with bigger accounts love it. People with smaller accounts hate it. For me personally, there is a third type of player, because I can understand the joy and the increased level of quote unquote fun, but that is not where I personally gain the biggest amount of enjoyment from this game mode. I am a very competitive player, and here the problem is, if I keep on playing without refreshing my best characters and just replace one champion or another, and then I happen to lose a match, I'll always have that thought at the back of my mind: would I have lost if I had my Ghost? Would I have lost if I had my Nick Fury? And in every single meta of Battlegrounds, there are some champions that are borderline must-haves. Like, I do believe Nick Fury is arguably one of the scariest defenders that, you pretty much always want to have access to. Similarly to Ghost in this meta, I think you always want to have access to Ghost or Human Torch, or Hitmonkey is insane for this meta. And whilst there are some champions that I would and could replace without, being too stressed about it, but I would not feel comfortable, let's say, competing for top 10 in Battlegrounds without those champions. So that, again, leaves me with the same issue that these smaller account players have. If I want to compete at my best peak level, I need to either stop playing or refresh the champions. Which is the point where I think, A, the unit recharge cost is too high. I think 45 units is too much. I think it ought to be 30 units max to begin with, but not just in itself. I do think if we only get one charge back every 6 hours and we only have 3 maximum charges, I do think then it should be like 10 units or 15 units or something like that. However, there's an alternate solution or adjustment that I personally would like to see, and then perhaps I would have a lot less issue with this whole charge recharge system and everything else. Because keep in mind, this is an additional cost or problem on top of the energy requirement already. So it's not like without these recharge costs we could just play infinitely. We still need to fork up the energy refills, which is cheaper and more affordable, comparatively speaking, but it's still another cost nonetheless. And there are very good arguments to make that there should perhaps be a separate energy for this game mode altogether. But we're not going to go into that right now. I think that waiting 18 hours for a champion to recharge fully is a bit too ridiculous. It really is. Also, given the fact that you only have 3 charges, and that happens very briefly, using up 3 charges on a champion that you rely on could be a matter of, again, 3 matches, and that's half an hour. And then you have to wait 18 hours for it to recharge. I think this is way too long. I would be willing or more accepting to live with this 45 unit recharge cost if we would A, have 5 charges. I don't think 5 charges is pushing it too much. I think 5 is still a very finite amount, but that could increase your quote unquote session length to begin with. And C, I do think that the recharge time has to be halved at least, if not 2 hours. Because, again, realistically thinking, if you play this game mode in one afternoon, right, and you use all 3 of your charges, then you wake up next morning and the champion's still not recharged. You basically can only play next midday, or you, again, need to fork up the units. So I do think I'd be willing to accept the 45 unit kind of like recharge cost if we would have 5 charges and it will recharge quicker, like every 2 hours instead. That means in 10 hours your champions recharge fully, or in the worst case in 15 hours your champions recharge from 0 to 5 charges. But the 5 charge thing, I think it is quite important, because those 3 charges can fly out just like that, especially right now. Also, with the whole modern hacker situation, it just feels so bad when you bring in your best champions, you draft the best you can, and you basically just waste a charge. You waste 1/3 of your opponent's energy because somebody is just gonna mod you into oblivion. I personally have started just forfeiting the matches of people who I know are definitely modders, so I don't waste the charge on a champion. So yes, this 45 unit cost is definitely a quite controversial thing, but my fear is that the true feedback of community will not be heard, because majority of people who are voicing their opinion during their streams or whatever else are indeed people with larger accounts, typically from CCP, and CCP does tend to be a lot more accepting Kabam's less than player-friendly moves, so on and so forth. But I definitely do want to have a discussion about this as this game mode is ready to come to the game fully and properly. Because I do think that Battlegrounds in itself, obviously, in my opinion, is an amazing game mode that relatively accurately measures your overall ability in the game. You have to have tons of knowledge about champion interactions and everything else. You have to be able to play well enough, and you have to have, the good account. All three of those things are combined there. This recharge cost thing is definitely overemphasizing the account thing and kind of diluting the knowledge and diluting the skill element of this game mode, which I am not in favor of at all, because it once again gives players either a hard choice of spending their hard-earned unit, or it basically forces them to stop playing the game mode, which is not something that I think anybody at Kabam really wants to. Or again, it just increases the competitive edge of people who already had a competitive edge with larger accounts. So I definitely think this system still needs quite a lot of tuning. Recharge time is way too long, and I don't think we have enough charges if they want to keep this super high cost for recharging a champion. Or alternatively, I think that recharge cost should go down to like 15 units, and then, fine, I guess. Let me know what kind of middle ground compromise would you guys agree with, because that is kind of obvious. In ideal world, let's say, there will be no charge limit at all, and that's it, right? But Kabam's never gonna go for it, because they have to find every single way how to milk the players, unfortunately. That is just reality with what type of company we are dealing with. They're always trying to force monetization in every single game mode as hard as they can. But it's also very important that we let them know when they are overdoing it. And I do think that in the current system, they are definitely overdoing it, in my personal opinion. Again, I'm not as horrified personally with this 45 recharge cost as I thought I would be, because yes, there are actual upsides of it. You are forced to kind of like be more creative, and it does contribute to enjoyment of people who have bigger accounts and play relatively casually. But if you're trying to be super competitive, that's going to come with the cost now. Or if you have a smaller account, that disadvantages you even further than this game mode did in the first place. So I do think we need to strike a better balance there. I definitely do think that we need a better balance in the solution. And what Kabam is currently proposing is definitely slowing down everyone's excitement and enjoyment about Battlegrounds. Obviously with the other issues of modders and cheaters and everything else. But that is something we have to address here as well. Let me know what you guys think. So yeah. Hello there guys, and welcome back to the channel. So we have all the information about the next